I saved a dying youth by the creek and made him my husband. But when he ascended the throne, I became the stain that had to be erased. I died in a frozen palace, my unborn child dying with me. When I opened my eyes, I was back to the day I first met that dying youth, Adrian Pei. Laundry day, my friends shout, skipping toward the water. They have no idea a viper lies waiting in the tall grass. I roared, "No one's going. Who wants to wash clothes? I'm making crepes with everything in them. If he is truly heaven's chosen, let the gods save him." Chapter 1. I died in a cramped little courtyard. 10 days after entering the palace, I could no longer bear the cold and hunger and begged an eunuch for something to eat. I could endure it, but I had a child in my belly. The eunuch kicked me hard to the ground. "Filthy shrew, you still dream of the emperor?" I didn't dare say it wasn't me dreaming, but that back then, it was the emperor who had begged me to be his wife. I could only plead, "In 2 months I'll give birth. I'm guilty, but the child is innocent. Let me bear him, then I'll die. Will that do?" I really couldn't bear to lose the child in my womb. He could already kick inside me. I thought, he's his child after all. He'll at least spare his own flesh and blood. The eunuch grinned savagely and stomped down on my belly. "A bastard wants to be born? You really think the imperial family are a bunch of vegetarians?" Blood spread under me, but I kept kneeling, knocking my head on the floor as I begged, "Please, old sir, tell His Majesty for me. Once the child is born, I'll kill myself at once." I wanted so desperately to give this child one chance to see the sun. The eunuch snapped, "Stop dreaming. This is all by the emperor's decree." My blood trickled along the cracks in the rough palace bricks, winding outward. Just like Peach Creek in Peach Village, carpeted with fallen blossoms. In my last shred of consciousness, I actually heard Adrian Pei hurrying over, his voice low. "Is it all cleaned up?" "Your Majesty, everything's clean," he said. "If anyone mentions Peach Village again, exterminate their 9 clans." So he hated those 3 years in Peach Village that much. Yet back then he had been all smiles as he begged me. "Peach Village is so beautiful, Lily is even more beautiful. There isn't a girl in this world lovelier than Lily. Marry me. We'll be together all our lives and have a whole brood of children." The moment I heard that, my heart moved. I was an orphan. What I wanted most was a big family. That youth was beautiful and warm. To have a brood of children with him, that would have been wonderful. I agreed with joy. The whole village was kind. No one ever bullied me for being an orphan. On the contrary, they helped me in every way. When they heard I was getting married, everyone helped us put together a lively wedding. I never thought that to him, all of that would one day become a taboo, never to be spoken of. Those good villagers ended up dragged down by me and died miserably. I was so unwilling, for my little friends, and for that child who never came into this world. "Lily, come wash clothes with us." Suddenly I heard my friends calling me. I opened my eyes and found I was back in my own house in Peach Village. The almanac on the table was turned to the very day, in my past life, when I saved Adrian Pei. Had I been reborn? I scrambled up from the bed. Outside the sun was bright. The courtyard was full of warm air and spring blossoms. My friends were alive and kicking. My eyes went wet at once. I was sure I had been reborn. In my past life, these 3 were closest to me, and so their families ended up dying the most miserably. In this life, I must make it up to them. Thinking of this, fighting spirit flooded through me. I shouted out the window, "Nobody's going. Such a beautiful spring day. Who wants to wash clothes? Come in, I'll cook you something good." I'd inherited my mother's cooking skills. I used to go sell food in town. Folks from miles around all knew I was handy in the kitchen. So the moment I said something good, my friends were like fish on a hook and obediently came into the yard. They all laughed and asked, "Lily, what are you going to make this time?" "Crepes with everything," I said. The 3 of them started drooling the instant they heard that. I said, "Wipe your mouths, stop looking like little fools." They burst into giggles together. I quickly set up the stove and started making crepes. Watching me pile in more and more fillings, they were stunned. "Lily, are you planning to stop living after this meal?" I handed them thick stuffed rolls and said, "Stop living? I'm going to live even better. And I'm going to get rich together with you." With what I knew from the last life, I was very clear on how to make money. As for that beast, since he's heaven's chosen, Let heaven save him. By the time we finished eating, it was past noon. We'd actually played around all morning. I thought of that man in the water. By now, he should have bloated and floated. I washed up the bowls. The four of us went to Peach Creek to wash clothes, singing as we walked. When we reached Peach Creek, petals were falling everywhere. The flowing water carried a faint fragrance. Far from that scum, alive, it felt wonderful. Adrian Pei wasn't in the water. He'd probably been swept away. Good. At least he hadn't polluted this pool of spring water. There had been sharp spring rains lately and Peach Creek was swollen. Without rescue, he would just keep drifting along. He'd float straight to the eastern sea to feed the sharks. The thought made me happy. When I got home, I hung the clothes to dry. Seeing the sun so bright, I dragged out the bedding to air as well. Then I lay on a bamboo chair while sunlight streamed through the peach branches onto my body. Warm, impossibly comfortable. When I thought of that cold, narrow corner of the cold palace, the past was unbearable to recall. To live again, this was truly heaven's gift to me. I had to repay the villagers who had helped me. As I was thinking that, I suddenly heard something heavy crash against my gate. I rose and opened it. Adrian Pei sat slumped by the door, soaked through and covered in wounds. He weakly leaned there and asked, "Why didn't you go wash?" My heart jumped. He wasn't dead? He was asking why I hadn't gone to wash? How did he know I was supposed to go? Could it be he'd been reborn too? He must have been. Cold sweat broke out all over me, but I couldn't let him know I was reborn. Nor could I show that I knew he was. In the last life, he killed the crown prince and seized the throne. With his ruthlessness, if he knew that I knew, he'd probably cut my throat on the spot. He was here to test me. I pointed at the clothes hanging all over the yard. "You're a strange one. Can't you see all these clothes drying here? And you still ask why I didn't go wash? And anyway, what I do with my laundry, what's it to you?" He glanced around the courtyard and panted, "Why didn't you go wash this morning?" "You're sick in the head, aren't you?" I snapped. "Morning or afternoon, I wash when I like. Since when is it your business?" He stared, stunned. It seemed he'd convinced himself there was nothing suspicious about the washing. Then he actually reached out to grab my hand. It felt like being bitten by a viper. I snatched it back at once. Then I swung around and slapped him hard across the face. "Shameless lesher, who are you trying to touch?" Breathing roughly, he said, "Lily, save me." I laughed to myself. "Save you? Aren't you heaven's chosen? Why don't you let heaven save you?" But I couldn't let him see my thoughts. So I put on a concerned face and asked, "What happened to you?" He said he'd slipped and fallen off a cliff, just as in my last life. In truth, he had tried to assassinate the crown prince and been chased into the river by soldiers. So from the very moment he met me in the last life, he'd been lying. I looked at his wounds and muttered as if to myself, "These look a lot like cuts from soldiers' blades." He tensed at once. I slowly backed away. "You're a fugitive, aren't you?" "Save you? That's a crime. I'm a law-abiding citizen." Adrian Pei's face flushed red. "Stop pretending. I just called you Lily, and you weren't even surprised. You recognized me long ago, didn't you?" Damn it, what a viper. I'd almost fallen for it in that one careless moment. If it were just me, I'd be fine. I could die again. But behind me stood the lives of the whole village. My heart hardened in an instant. Strike while he's weak, kill him now. Then dump his corpse into Peach Creek. In this peach blossom flood, the water would sweep him to the eastern sea in less than 2 days. I could avenge myself and remove the threat without anyone knowing. Do it. My hand crept back toward the heavy bar used to brace the gate. Then I suddenly sensed something wrong. How had he survived? In the last life, I was the first to find him. He'd already been completely unconscious. It took my friends and me every ounce of strength to haul him out. This time I hadn't saved him, so how was he still alive? With the creek in flood, if no one had pulled him out, surviving would have been harder than climbing to heaven. He must have had accomplices. I tensed and glanced quickly around. Seeing my unease, Adrian Pei gave a cold little smile. "So you admit it?" I knew I couldn't confess even if I died. The moment I let anything slip, he'd silence me. So I snapped, "Admit what? Everyone in the village calls me Lily. What's strange about you knowing that? You're the one pretending to know me. What's your game?" He saw I wouldn't admit anything and tried to grab my arm again in a mock show of deep feeling. It was like getting a pillow when you're nodding off. I'd been worrying how to call for help without arousing his suspicion. The moment he grabbed me, I threw back my head and screamed, "Molester! Help, a molester!" That was exactly how a woman would react when grabbed by a stranger. Even with all his suspicions, he couldn't pick a hole in that. I knew all too well that he was as venomous as a snake and as vicious as a starving wolf. Every step I took had to be careful. I could not make a single wrong move. Peach Village was small. In moments, Nick was the first one there. Nick was my neighbor and had always treated me like a kid's sister. When he heard the man was harassing me, he swung his shovel and smacked it down. The deep, solid crack was very satisfying to hear. Villagers came running and soon had Adrian Pei surrounded. When they heard this lecher had tried to force himself on me, indignation flared in every face. They were ready to kill him on the spot. The people of Peach Village were simple and kind. My mother had once saved all their lives. Back then, a malaria-like fever swept through. Not one household was spared. My mother boiled wild artemisia from the mountain and saved them, so they gave extra care to me, the orphan she left behind. But I couldn't let the villagers stain their hands with blood because of me. If the authorities investigated, it would be a huge risk. Once they had beaten Adrian Pei until he couldn't fight back, I stopped them. He did not strike back at all, just stared at me fixedly. "Lily, do you hate me that much? If this is our first meeting, where does that hatred come from?" If I was going to act, I had to act well. I strode up and slapped him twice more. "Shameless! Who are you calling by name? Where did you hear someone call me that, and then come here to slander me? Have I ever seen you? You sit here spouting nonsense. Whose reputation are you trying to ruin?" Then I turned to the villagers. "Everyone, please bear witness. I, Lily Meng, was born and raised in Peach Village. Have I ever acted improperly in any way? This scoundrel sat at my door today, claiming he knows me, that there's something between us. I am clean and innocent, yet he splashes dirty water on me for no reason. Even injured like this, he still had evil intentions toward me. That proves he's no good. Who knows what he's up to? Please help me take him to the county government office. I need my name cleared." Voices rose all around me. "Right, you can see at a glance he's trouble. Of all people to slander, he slanders Lily. She's the best girl in the village. So shameless, sitting at her door plotting harm." Several sturdy men tied him up and prepared to take him to the magistrate. I followed along, worried something might happen. I wanted him in official custody as soon as possible. Once he reached the government office, his identity would be exposed. Wouldn't the crown prince kill him then? But halfway there I felt something off. All the way to the government office he hadn't resisted, not even once. He was even calm. For a man hunted by soldiers, that was wrong. He was careful, decisive, ambitious, and never the type to wait for death. Something was definitely wrong about how relaxed he was. Suddenly I remembered. In my past life, the prefect of Changzhou Prefecture, where I lived, had been promoted to Minister of Personnel after Adrian Pei took the throne. All the officials of Changzhou were raised up with him. The day after I saved him, the county magistrate of Peach County personally led officers to search the area. When they saw Adrian Pei, I claimed he was my elder brother, injured while gathering herbs. They believed it. They even kindly gave me wound salve. I'd wondered why they were so kind, why they believed so easily. Now I understood. They were never there to arrest a fugitive. They came carrying not only blades and spears, but thick ropes. Those ropes were used for rescues in our area. They hadn't come to catch a fugitive. They had come to rescue one. No wonder Adrian Pei had chosen Changzhou as the place to strike at the crown prince. Changzhou must have been his power base. So now he wasn't worried at all. Us sending him to the magistrate was exactly what he wanted. We were letting a tiger back into the mountains. Thinking of my own wretched death in the last life, and the tragedy that struck the village, cold sweat soaked my back. I'd thought that with what I knew from before, revenge would be easy. I'd forgotten that he had been reborn too. He remembered as much as I did, and he was far more meticulous, far more vicious, far more ruthless. Right now, Peach Village and I were in even greater danger than before. How could I have been so careless? I quietly pulled Nick aside and spoke to him in a low, careful voice. Whatever you and I say and do now must not be known by anyone else. You go ahead to the county office and see, is there any sign of officers setting out to search? I think that man doesn't fear going to the magistrate. That smells like trouble. If the officers come out carrying not only blades and spears but thick ropes, you must hurry and get to the footbridge between Peach Village and the government office ahead of them. Destroy it so the officers can't cross, and don't leave any traces. If anyone asks, just say it was washed away by flash floods. Go and come back quickly. I still wasn't sure how much this new life would change things, so I had Nick scout first. He didn't know why I wanted this, but he always trusted my word. He muttered something about needing to relieve himself and quietly slipped away from the escort party. Once I saw him running off, I suggested we all stop and rest at the roadside. Nick came back, drenched in sweat, sooner than I'd expected. My heart clenched. By the timing, he shouldn't have reached the government office yet. Chapter 2. He slipped into the group escorting the prisoner and said, "The peach blossom flood is on these days. I'll go ahead and scout the road." In a short while, he ran back. "The bridge up ahead got washed out by the flood. We can't cross." I acted annoyed and helpless and called everyone to turn back. On the way home, I saw suspicion flicker in Adrian Pei's eyes, but he couldn't find any flaw to grab onto. Nick whispered to me, "I'd just crossed the bridge and gone less than 2 li when I saw officers coming. They really were carrying thick ropes." "Lily, you're amazing. You even predicted that." When I ran back to the broken bridge, the officers were already on the opposite bank. I hadn't expected the officers to arrive so quickly this time. In the last life, the Crown Prince's men had been stationed in the county, watching the main route to the capital. I didn't know if they were still there now. Those people worked in deep secrecy. A commoner couldn't just approach them. I had to find a way to contact them as soon as possible. If the county government office's people reached Adrian Pei first, we were done. First, I had to figure out his situation in this life. How many accomplices did he have? What did they want, leaving him at my door after saving him? We had beaten him just now, and his accomplices still hadn't shown themselves. A man capable of usurping the throne would have talented people under him, and no shortage of poisons and knockout incense. If his subordinates weren't intervening, there had to be something they feared, or something they wanted. I had to start from that fear and that desire. Where to keep him once we brought him back to the village was a problem. If we locked him in my house, me, an unmarried orphan girl, that wouldn't look right. To him, it would be proof of some connection between us. If we kept him in another home, we'd be bringing terrible danger on that family. I went to consult the village headman. "Put him in the abandoned city god temple," he said. "There's plenty of space there." I suddenly remembered. When I'd helped my mother sell food there in the past, the old Taoist had told us there was a secret chamber beneath the stage, dug long ago as a refuge. Almost no one knew of it. The headman's suggestion was perfect. I was going to use it to put on a show, let that beast suffer, and force his secrets into the open. When we brought Adrian Pei to the city god temple, I could see him tense up. "Lily, why aren't you taking me home?" I spat in his face. "Pah! Shameless! Even at a time like this, you talk nonsense, trying to ruin my name. Say another word and I'll cut out your tongue." He didn't get angry at my spittle. His eyes burned as he scanned my face and my body. Then he smiled. "Lily is still as fiery as ever." I punched him in the eye. "Keep babbling and I'll poke your eyes out." Then I turned to the villagers. "Let's hurry and fix the bridge. We'll send this shameless thing to the government office as soon as possible." I wanted everyone to see that all I cared about was sending him to the magistrate. I didn't expect Adrian Pei to say with a look of deep affection, "Lily, whether you believe me or not, in this life and the last, I have only ever loved you." Oh, for heaven's sake. This beast actually had the gall to say that. Wasn't he just begging for a beating? I didn't bother with words. Just slapped him twice more. "You beast! It actually pains you not to be beaten, huh? I'll oblige you." I hit as hard as I could, but in the end, I was just a girl. My strength wasn't great. He took my blows as if they were nothing, curling his tongue against his cheek and smiling like some rogue teasing a good woman. It almost choked me with rage. I threw propriety to the wind, slipped off my straw sandals, and laid into him. I was going to beat that smirk off his face. Better to beat him to death than let myself die of indignation. The soles of those sandals were rough. After 2 strikes, the delicate skin of his face was gouged into bloody lines. He treasured that face of his. In the last life, I'd been fooled by that pretty face too. Thinking of that, I got even angrier. Serves you right. Say another word of nonsense and you won't live to see the magistrate. I'll blind you right now. I yanked out the bamboo hairpin from my bun, pressed its tip near his eye, and said coldly, "Want to try?" His face went white. At last, he behaved himself. His lofty, mocking expression disappeared. He remembered that I was someone who slaughtered chickens and sheep without blinking. Even so, hearing how furious I was and that I was still planning to send him to the authorities clearly put him at ease. But I couldn't relax. What was he afraid of? What was he after? The answer meant life or death. I told myself firmly, I must first make him certain I'm not reborn. If I were meeting this man for the first time today, what would I do? I pictured him in my mind not as Adrian Pei, but as a total stranger. Then the questions came naturally. Who are you? Why did you come here? How did you get those wounds? Why are you trying to ruin my reputation? Yes, I thought. If I didn't know him, those were exactly the questions I'd ask, he smiled. I'm someone who loves you. I came especially to find you, so I went straight to your house. These injuries are from accidentally falling off a cliff. I'm not slandering you. I truly know you. I want to spend my life with you, till our hair turns white. He was still saying filthy things at a time like this. Did he think I was made of clay? In the last life, I'd been the boldest, most outspoken girl in the village. It was only after marrying him and getting pregnant that I toned myself down. And later, just to keep my child alive, I had swallowed every humiliation. He had forgotten my true nature. Still, his reaction told me he believed I was not reborn. After he spoke, he even licked his lips as he looked at me. In the past, that little gesture had sent my heart fluttering. Now it was ridiculous. I quietly raised my hand and pinched my fingers in a particular way. At the sight of that, his body gave an involuntary shudder. He knew I was about to summon the peach blossom snakes. Those snakes were not venomous, but they had a special effect. Anyone they bit would feel as if ants swarmed over their body, itching with a madness that could not be eased. Without the antidote, no amount of scratching, even tearing your own flesh into shreds, would stop it. After 3 hours, the effect would end on its own. Adrian Pei had seen the peach blossom snakes in the last life. Now, when he saw me begin the ritual, he finally lost his composure. Don't do anything you'll regret, Lily Meng, he said, wary. You'll regret it. Regret? There was nothing in this world I regretted more than what had happened in my last life. The peach blossom snake flicked its tongue and slid toward him. He blanched and yelled, Lily Meng, if you use the snakes, I'll reveal your secret. I have walked my path straight and clean, I said. What secret could I have? Why would I be afraid of you? Your undergarment is white, embroidered with pink peach blossoms. I froze and felt my face go hot. I'm right, aren't I? I also know. He paused deliberately, threatening. I stuffed an insole into his mouth. You filthy pervert, so you scouted in advance. You must have watched me washing clothes and now you're making things up. I'll teach you not to smear my name. I summoned more peach blossom snakes. With his mouth gagged, he could only moan, "Mf, mf." Soon, the itching started, like 10,000 ants boring into his flesh. He writhed desperately. I sat back and watched, relaxed, and even mocked him. You looked just like a dung beetle rolling its ball. In no time, he was drenched in sweat. I sat down in front of him and watched his constant struggling. Will you dare slander me again? Will you dare lie to me again when I ask you something? He nodded frantically. If you say another unnecessary word, I said, I'll tear your tongue out. I pulled out the insole. Through gritted teeth, half laughing in pain, he gasped. I really did fall while gathering herbs. The flood was fierce and swept me away. I blacked out. But my fate wasn't sealed. The current washed me into a backwater pool. My head hit a rock and I came to. I clawed my way out and collapsed in front of your door. I didn't mean to find you. I only learned your name when I heard the girl calling you Lily. He truly could endure what others could not. Even now, He dared not tell the whole truth. But I couldn't let him see my doubt. I had to act as if I believed him so he'd lower his guard. Then, step by step, I'd pry out his plot. Everything looked similar to the last life, yet it was not the same. It was different. And I was no longer the same either. This time, I would be the one more ruthless than him. I had them tie him to the stage. Then I announced loudly, "Light a bonfire so everyone can see this shameless man. We're not giving him the antidote today. He splashed filth on me like that. Letting him live is already cheap. Once the bridge is fixed, we'll send him to the magistrate and have him given 200 strokes. We'll see if he dares talk nonsense again." I was going to use this humiliation and this torment to force his accomplices into the open. The headman said a few strong young men would take turns guarding through the night, while everyone else went home to rest. Tomorrow they'd repair the bridge. Everyone agreed and went off. I passed a packet to one of the guards and muttered for show, "The poison will pass on its own in 3 hours, but we should guard against him dying before then. Watch him. When he's about to die, give him this. Don't let him die by our hands." Then I put the snakes back in their pouch and went home. Adrian Pei's eyes were on me the whole time, so he must have seen. That antidote was real, but I doctored it. Under cover of night, I slipped back to the city god temple and hid in the secret chamber beneath the stage. If they tried to harm the guards, or once I confirmed all his accomplices were present, I'd unleash the snakes. After about the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, I saw the 6 guards slump to the ground. They were clearly drugged by knockout incense. Then 2 shadows emerged, one with a swarthy face, one pale, ink and ivory. They checked each villager in turn, making sure all were unconscious. Then they untied Adrian Pei and knelt before him. He didn't waste breath on them, just yanked off his outer robe and frantically scratched himself all over. In moments, his body was a bloody mess. "Find the antidote," he hissed. He directed them to the packet I'd given the guards. He had one of them wet a fingertip with the powder and swallow. When, after 3 or 5 minutes, nothing happened, he finally gulped down the rest of the packet himself. Not long after, the itching stopped, but his whole body was still flayed and bloody, a grisly sight. Face dark, he put his robe back on. "That bitch, I'll flay her and strip her tendons." In my heart I thought, yes, that's more like the real you. All that talk of true love had been revolting. He asked, "Did you check the bridge? How did it break?" Ink said, "Forgive me, my lord. When I arrived, the log was already gone. It must have been washed away by the flood." Ivory said, "My lord, after what that woman did to you, should we—" He drew his hand across his own neck. "Not yet," Adrian Pei said. "She can control snakes. Those peach blossom snakes are strange. We must get her method of controlling them. That skill is worth more than that fool's entire garrison in Tongzhou City." I smiled silently. So he had his eye on my snake control. In the past life, he'd seen its power. Back then, refugees had been raiding villages, killing anyone who resisted. To protect the lives and property of everyone in the village, I had used the snakes once. They'd instantly reduced a pack of near-mad bandits to helpless wrecks. He must have started coveting the technique then. He had hinted and probed around me after that. I'd almost told him. But I remembered my mother's repeated warning. Never reveal the secret, not even to the person closest to you. The power had come down my bloodline, naturally inherited from her. Others could not wield it. If anyone else learned of it and I refused to serve them, it would bring death on me. I believed her and brushed him off. Later he dragged me into the palace and pretended to be gentle and devoted, coaxing me to give up the method. When I refused, he wanted me to use it to crush officials who disobeyed him. I didn't want to do that, and by then I had lost that power. When a snake controller becomes pregnant, the spiritual power naturally passes into the unborn child. Unless one willingly gives up the art, one cannot leave descendants. He thought my refusal to speak or use the snakes meant I wouldn't serve him. At the same time, to hide the truth that he had murdered the crown prince to seize the throne, he and his faction were spreading stories. They said he was heaven's chosen, saved by gods in every crisis. In that story, Peach Village could not exist. My terrible death had been inevitable. But he would never have guessed that the snake-controlling power he coveted most was something he himself had destroyed. The child in my womb had been the only one in this world who could have inherited it. That was the cruelest irony. This time, I would make sure he knew that before he died. Ink said cautiously, "But does she know about you, my lord?" "Even if she knows a little, we can't let anyone in this village live. Snake control is just icing on the cake. If word of our business leaks, it will cost us our lives." "I've got that weighed," Adrian Pei said. "I tested her several times today, used all sorts of tricks. Even in her rage, she didn't slip. Don't touch the villagers. We're in the dark for now. If we slaughter them, we'll make a stir. We failed to assassinate that useless crown prince. We have to lie low for a while. We can't let that old emperor sense anything." "My lord is certain she knows nothing?" Ink asked. "In my view, that woman is unfathomable." "She?" Adrian Pei snorted. "She can't slip out of my hand. I only need to work her a little, and she'll be devoted to me." It almost made me spit blood. In the last life, I'd indeed fallen for him, just as he said. "Any news of Jade and Ruby?" he asked. Ivory replied, "They lured away the crown prince's hunters, then doubled back to tail them. They found those men posing as merchants and hiding in the Joy Inn, making no report to the authorities. Could it be they also suspect Peach County's officials?" "There are a few with brains under that useless man," Adrian Pei said. "Not like Magistrate Liu, that good-for-nothing. One broken log bridge stops him cold." Ivory asked, "What should we do next?" "Tell Magistrate Liu to be at Peach Village tomorrow," said Adrian Pei. "Say he's escorting me back to the county. We get ambushed on the way, and they will choose Lily Meng's house to keep me in. I must bring that Lily Meng under my control. Peach Village is a perfect hideout. You can attack or retreat by land or water. The villagers are simple, easy to fool. Ignore that crown prince's men. I never meant to run anyway. Let them sit on that main road. Idiots. Send Jade and Ruby to contact the prefect of Changzhou Prefecture. Have him ready troops outside Peach Village in 15 days. Once they're in place, leave me a secret mark." "Yes, my lord." The two of them tied him up again and slipped away. Truly a belly full of poison, and he still thought he'd have his way. Perfect. I would simply use his plan against him. Chapter 3. I slipped out from under the stage, swam out of the village that very night, disguised myself as a boy, and headed for the county town and the Joy Inn. When I'd been beating Adrian Pei earlier, I had accidentally torn off the jade pendant at his waist. At the inn, I found the boy who carried tea and gave him 10 strings of cash to deliver the pendant to whatever northern guests were staying there that day. Moments later, a man came over to my table. "Brother, may I buy you a pot of wine?" 16. By the time I returned to Peach Village, dawn was breaking. Magistrate Liu's men would be arriving soon. The guards in the city god temple woke without any idea what had happened. Seeing Adrian Pei still tied to the stage, they sighed in relief. He, in turn, pretended to be asleep. I tossed a basin of salt water over him. He screamed. His wounds hadn't even begun to scab. The salt seared him half to death. I patted his cheek. He still put on a dazed act. I casually hung the jade pendant back at his waist. After breakfast, Magistrate Liu arrived. Exactly as Adrian Pei had predicted, he insisted on putting the prisoner in my house. I pretended to refuse, but let myself be persuaded and took him in. 2 officers stayed with him. They were no strangers, Ink and Ivory. Once the bridge was fixed, they claimed Adrian Pei was too seriously wounded and needed rest. They made no move to take him away. He showered me with concern and tender gestures. Even with his wounds, he tried to wash my feet. He got a loud scolding for his trouble, but I did start giving him much better food. That made his heart flutter. He thought I was just being tsundere and had already fallen for him. His confidence saved me quite a bit of effort. I counted the days. There were only 10 left until the day, in my past life, when refugees had raided the village. He clearly knew the date too. He feigned frailty and waited for the day I'd unleash the snakes. He thought that with the experience of a past life, he'd finally figure everything out this time. I would make sure he understood. I would make him ache to his very bones with that understanding. At the same time, something else was happening in the Great Yu Kingdom. In the south, cotton had had 3 bumper harvests in a row. Winters had been warm. Farmers couldn't sell their cotton and had slashed prices. Now it was summer. The bales were starting to grow bugs. Cotton was worth less than firewood. I sent Nick to rent a warehouse in the county and quietly hoard cotton. He was the perfect person to handle it. He trusted me, talked little, and was steady and reliable. No one else knew, but I knew the refugees had fled because war was about to break out in the northern frontier. That war would drag on for 4 years. Come winter, northern soldiers would desperately need cotton clothes and quilts. By then, the summer's cotton would have been abandoned. The court would be forced to spend heavily to buy it up. Together with war costs, the treasury would be emptied. Adrian Pei had seized the throne in the midst of that national crisis. The crown prince, in fact, had been a man who worried for the country and the people. I wanted to give him a hand. And I wanted to repay the villagers' kindness to me. To make up in some way for the suffering they endured in the last life. Gradually, refugees began to pass the village. At first, they could still beg some food along the way. Soon, there was nothing left to beg, so some started robbing. Adrian Pei sat comfortably inside, pretending to be weak and recovering. He knew I could use snakes to protect the village, so he didn't fear the refugees. But he still didn't know that his weakness was not entirely an act. My mother's 10 fragrance soft tendon powder was truly marvelous. It could sap a person's strength slowly without them noticing. It also made their blood fragrant. After 10 days, once they bled, the scent would pour out. At last, the day came when a large horde of refugees arrived. At first light, I found a crescent mark carved into the peach tree by my door. Ink went out briefly and soon came back. The 3 of them exchanged a knowing nod and ate their breakfast in peace. When they finished, I went out to work in the fields as usual. In the last life, I'd been in the fields when I saw the refugees attacking the villagers. That was when I'd used the snakes. I'd barely won and had been badly wounded. Seeing me leave, Adrian Pei's cheek twitched. "Be careful," he said. I rolled my eyes at him. "Be careful sowing a field? Are you afraid I'll choke on my food next?" He took my reaction at face value and suspected nothing. Half an hour later, noise rose at the village entrance. In moments, it reached my doorstep. Adrian Pei was startled. In the last life, the refugees had never made it this far. I'd stopped them midway. Ivory peered out from atop the wall. "Something's wrong," he said suddenly. "Where are the children? If the adults went to the fields, where did all the children go?" No sooner had he spoken than there was a chorus of hissing from inside the house. Hundreds of snakes poured forth. The 3 men couldn't cut them down fast enough. Each of them was bitten. All 3 began to claw at themselves, their bodies slick with blood. Their blood, once flowing, gave off a heavy fragrance. Their limbs went limp. Knowing something had gone awry, Adrian Pei ordered Ink to run for help outside the village. That morning, seeing the mark on the tree, they'd sent Ink to scout the outskirts. He'd seen troops in the distance and assumed they were the reinforcements Jade and Ruby had brought. Now he knew it spelled trouble. Still, he gritted his teeth against the itching and stumbled toward the encampment. He didn't know he was walking into a trap. Those were the Crown Prince's men. 15 days earlier at the inn, I'd struck a bargain with the Crown Prince's men. I'd told them Adrian Pei's plan and accepted 1,000 taels of silver in exchange. More than that, I'd said Adrian's reputation among the common people was not villainous, but rather somewhat virtuous. If the Crown Prince killed him outright, it would damage his own name. And if the current emperor learned of it, the Crown Prince's position would be shaken. Better, I said, to have refugees do the killing. They asked why they should believe me. I told them to intercept Jade and Ruby and interrogate them thoroughly. They would see I hadn't lied, and I told them I had powers. Working with me would only benefit the Crown Prince's cause. For someone reborn, with many skills inherited from my mother, it wasn't hard to show a little divinity. Merely mentioning the refugees and the coming war in the northern frontier convinced them. The northern frontier was, as yet, only in skirmishes. The Great Yu Kingdom was pretending to negotiate, and no commoner knew a war was being prepared. The refugees had not yet reached Changzhou. Yet I knew. Their commander reported back, and they agreed to cooperate with me. One day earlier, that mob of refugees had heard a rumor from somewhere. If they found someone whose blood carried a wonderful fragrance and could fill a small jug with it, they could exchange it at the prefecture for 100 taels of silver. It was said to be a precious medicinal ingredient desperately needed for the prefect's sickly son. That morning, whipped up by greed, the mob had rushed straight toward Peach Village. Someone had said the fragrant blooded man was there. No one knew who spread the word. They only knew that someone had already brought back such blood and gotten 100 taels. That made the mob even more frenzied. Somehow they were led right toward my house. The moment they drew near, they smelled the fragrance. They smashed the door and surged toward Adrian Pei. He and Ivory, weakened by the powders I'd been feeding them in their meals, had no strength once they started bleeding. The refugees brandished knives and fought each other to get at them. They didn't stop at draining their veins. They hacked piece by piece, squeezing for every last drop of blood. By the time Adrian Pei was at his final breath, I leaned to his ear and whispered, "Do you know what happens to the snake controlling power? When I became pregnant, it passed into my womb, so the art you coveted so much, you destroyed it with your own hands." With his last strength, he let out a ragged howl. Then he died. Blood spent, flesh gone. Not a patch of whole skin remained. Summer passed. The matter of Adrian Pei was over. The villagers, whom I had persuaded to flee into the mountains before the refugees came, never saw the scene. When they came back, the Crown Prince's men had already cleaned everything up. All they knew was that a man had come to the village and tried to molest me, and not long after he was killed by refugees. I organized my friends to sew cotton clothing and quilts together. They were puzzled. Why make those in such hot weather? I told them they could make money. They believed me. In their eyes, my mother and I were both extraordinary. My mother had once said she couldn't control when she would leave. If one day she was gone, I shouldn't grieve. If I remembered what she'd taught me, I would live well. I also had the villagers gather artemisia from the hills. Fresh, it wasn't worth anything and couldn't be stored. So I had everyone dry it thoroughly and put it away. Then I taught them how to boil it into a remedy. In winter, another bout of that fever would spread. Without it, many would die. In the 10th month, war broke out in the northern frontier. The northern lands were bitterly cold. They desperately needed things to keep warm. Cotton prices soared, but you still couldn't buy any. The Crown Prince's men came to collect my stockpiled cotton, as agreed. It all went to keep the border soldiers warm, so I sold it at a fair price. In the Emperor's eyes, the Crown Prince showed foresight and could be entrusted with great responsibility. In the eyes of the northern troops, he cared for them and was someone worth dying for. He wished to keep working with me, but I refused. I had to leave the village. As my mother had said, once people knew someone like me existed, it would invite death. Even the worthiest ruler would someday harbor suspicion. I had sold the cotton cheaply, yes, but I'd bought it for less than firewood. That let the people of Peach Village earn more in a season than they might in a lifetime. I also taught my friends to make crepes with fillings and flour cakes. I told them girls must have the ability to stand on their own. If their husband's family treated them poorly, they could still make a living with these skills. When winter neared, I left. I didn't say goodbye to anyone, just as my mother had gone. She'd once told me that where she was from, the sea was endless and blue, with sun all year round. I loved warmth, loved the sea. I decided to go further south, to seek the place where my mother had once lived.